Welcome and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome at this event, Energy Efficiency First, Getting Fit for Climate and Economic Recovery. My name is Arianna Vitali, and I'm Secretary General at the Coalition for Energy Savings. The Coalition for Energy Savings is the voice of energy efficiency and energy savings in Europe. It is composed by a unique, diversified membership that brings together businesses, local authorities, energy communities, energy agencies, and civil society organizations. Today, ahead of the release of the Fit for 55 package that is expected in the month of July, which includes the revision of the Energy Efficiency Directive, we are together to discuss how energy efficiency can help achieving Europe climate targets, and as well how it can help to recover sustainably for the COVID economic crisis. Today, we have a keynote speech by Ms. Paula Pinho, Director at DG Energy, Director at the Directorate for Just Transition, Consumers, Energy Efficiency and Innovation. She will deliver our keynote address. Her speech will be followed by a panel discussion of distinguished guests, and the event will be moderated by Philippa Nuttall-Jones, Editor-in-Chief of Energy Monitor. So you will be allowed to ask questions, and please be as interactive as possible through the chat box. And Philippa will take care of addressing and redirecting your questions to Ms. Paula Pinho and as well to the panelists. I would like also to say to everyone that this event is recorded. Before handing over to Ms. Paula Pinho, I would like, however, to say very few words. The Coalition for Energy Savings has been advocating for more than 10 years in support of strong energy efficiency policies. And of course, we see clear improvement in that respect in the current legal framework. For example, the European Green Deal has fully acknowledged the role of energy efficiency to meet broad climate and environmental and sustainability goals, and it also put forward energy efficiency as a key solution to ensure that the energy transition is fair and just and leaves no one behind. The energy efficiency principle has been recognized as a guiding principle in energy policy. The European Commission has recently proposed a strategy, the renovation wave, to launch the renovation of the old and inefficient Europe building stock. And finally, there is an unprecedented amount of resources, the one of the EU recovery funds, that can be dedicated to finance energy efficiency at the national level. So I think there is great momentum for energy efficiency, but, and unfortunately there is still a but, progress on energy efficiency is still very slow and is not materializing fast enough. And actually, energy efficiency measures and its deployment do not match the challenges and the opportunities that we have ahead. On one side, there are few examples of this. For example, the 2020 energy efficiency target. The trends of energy use before the COVID pandemic struck were clear. There was a gap towards meeting the 2020 energy efficiency target. Even if now it appears that energy consumption is slowing down because of the recessions induced by the pandemic, it's clear that even if the target is met, this is a temporary, is only a temporary situation, and structural measures on energy efficiency have not happened at the pace needed. Also, for the 2030 targets, there is unfortunately still a gap towards the collective pledges that member states have met to achieve the 2030 energy efficiency goal. And finally, I think also at the national level, energy savings are not materializing faster in different sectors. Some measures are weak by design, some others are poorly implemented, and others are also not well enforced. So I think as there is no silver bullet for energy efficiency, it is extremely important that all those provisions are strengthened and reinforced further to ensure that energy savings are delivered urgently. In that sense, the release of the Fit for 55 package, which will set in legislation the objectives of the European Green Deal, is really the opportunity to reverse these negative trends and to refresh the policy approach by moving from general commitments to energy efficiency to real supports for energy efficiency on the ground. Since the adoption in 2012, its adoption in 2012, the Energy Efficiency Directive is being revised for the second time. There are clear lessons that are to be learned for its many successes, but also from its failures. For example, it's evident that the governance of the 2030 energy efficiency target and of the national contribution doesn't work, that indicative targets are not enough to drive further action on the ground and needs to be made it more stringent, so with a binding target at the EU level. Also, it's clear that the key provision of the energy savings obligation, the Article 7 of the Energy Efficiency Directive, needs to be strengthened further and be calibrated and adjusted to higher energy efficiency and climate target. Finally, and beyond the Energy Efficiency Directive itself, it's crucial that all the interactions among the different pieces of legislation of the Fit for 55 package are carefully managed and well thought. For example, we will need to build on the positive synergies that are existing from the different areas, like, for example, that reducing energy demands empower and enable renewable energy penetration, or, for example, ensuring that the energy efficiency can contribute to a smarter and more flexible energy system. I think I stop it here for now, and I'm really looking forward to hear more about Ms. Paula Pinho, Director at DG Energy, as mentioned, and to hear from her what's the status and the status of play of the Fit for 55 package. Please don't hesitate to put questions on the chat while she's speaking. The moderator will be picking it up after. Thank you very much, and please, Ms. Pinho, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ariane, and good afternoon to everyone, wherever you're hearing us from. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you for inviting me for this debate. I'm very, very pleased to participate in my recent new capacity as director responsible, among other topics, for energy efficiency in the European Commission. So it's really a great opportunity to meet all of you interested in the topic of energy efficiency. Now, to really a bit set the scene of our ongoing work, as you know, the European Green Deal is foreseeing a reduction of 55% of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. Now, in order to achieve this, it is clear that all sectors across the economy need to contribute. Energy, of course, but also transport, industry, agriculture. Now, if we bear in mind that energy consumption and production represent today 75% of greenhouse gas emissions, it's clear that energy and energy policy will have a key role in delivering this increased climate target by 2030. What does it mean for energy efficiency in particular? It is clear that energy efficiency, which should really be the no regrets policy, so sometimes one may wonder, why is it that we're not there yet? Energy efficiency needs to be prioritized in decarbonizing Europe's economy by 2050. The Green Deal already puts also a lot of emphasis on the energy efficiency first as a guiding principle of EU energy policy in the context of a sustainable transition. Now, last September, with the climate target plan, we have put forward also an impact assessment, which estimates that to achieve the 55% target for 2030, energy efficiency efforts will need to increase to between 36 and 37% for final energy consumption, and to 39 to 41% if we talk about primary energy consumption. Now, we know that targets alone are not enough. Therefore, there is the need to also equip member states with the appropriate measures. And it is clear that there's still a huge cost-effective energy savings potential, which needs to be tapped across the economy, and notably when it comes to buildings, transport, and industry. So this is where the revision of the Energy Efficiency Directive comes in. It is clearly part of the so-called Fit for 55 package, and really plays a decisive role in delivering that increased target. It will also strengthen the interlinkages with other policies, notably renewables and climate policies. So I like to see it as, or to call it as, the virtuous triangle between strengthened economic incentives, which is the carbon pricing, sectoral policies, in this case, energy efficiency, renewables, and creating an enabling framework for investments. And it's this combination of instruments that we are looking into when preparing this Fit for 55. And of course, and Tatiana, you mentioned it already, coherence across the initiatives of the package is absolutely key. We are not doing this revision of the Energy Efficiency Directive in a void. It's really as part of a package, and therefore coherence needs to be ensured from the outset. At the same time, when revising the Energy Efficiency Directive, we are also looking into delivering on some of the objectives that we put forward last year with the Energy System Integration Strategy and the renovation wave. Together then also with another piece of legislation, which will also be reworked, revised, but will come later this year, which is the European Performance of Buildings Directive. And of course, there are also interlinkages with the gas decarbonization package, and this one is foreseen also for later in the year. So clearly, in the revision of the Energy Efficiency Directive, we are looking, as I mentioned, into increasing the energy efficiency target in line with what has been already indicated in the climate target plan, and to mobilize the necessary energy efficiency efforts, which will allow us to reach the higher climate target. Now, Ariane, you mentioned, you touched on one of the issues, the nature of the energy efficiency target, and the question, should it be binding, should it remain indicative? So this is clearly one of the elements which is being analyzed. And it's clearly one of the aspects which got a lot of attention from respondents in the framework of the public consultation that we have put forward. Interestingly, about 2/3 of the respondents supported the binding nature of the energy efficiency targets. And if we look at the national energy and climate plans for 2030, we see, as you know, there is a gap. It could slightly change with last year's reduction of energy consumption following COVID, essentially, but still we do see a gap in terms of the existing 2030 target. And we believe that probably one of the reasons is precisely because there hasn't been as different than we had, for instance, with the renewables, where we had clear also national benchmarks, which allowed member states to assess what would be the ideal contribution towards an EU target. We didn't have this for energy efficiency. So we're looking into the nature of the target. Another very important aspect is, of course, the need to increase the ambition when it comes to energy savings obligation, because this provision, the famous Article 7, has really proven to be a key instrument in achieving energy savings in the end use. We're looking into what are the sectors where this energy savings could be accelerated. And we know there is potential in some sectors more than in others. For instance, transport is still one of the sectors where energy consumption continues to increase, both in absolute and relative terms. Then we are looking also at strengthening the role of the public sector. The public sector, of course, plays a role of example setter and can really lead by example, notably through renovations, through public procurement. So we're looking into what could be a strengthened role of the public sector in terms of energy savings and within the Energy Efficiency Directive. Then another aspect regards energy efficiency of buildings, where again there is a lot of potential still to be seized in terms of the efficiency of buildings, both in the public sector and in the private sector. And we are here aiming to streamline the necessary enabling measures so as to accelerate the availability of skills and the uptake of energy performance contracts, which are a cost-effective solution to renovate buildings. Further, we're looking into possible solutions to unlock the remaining energy savings potential in industry, where again, we see still some untapped potential. One of the aspects assessed here is linked to improving the provisions related to the obligations to carry out energy audits for non-SMEs and energy management systems. It will not surprise you that we are, of course, looking also into heating and cooling, where we are looking into strengthening the role of energy efficiency in heating and cooling in order to increase both the final and the primary energy efficiency in heating and cooling supply, and ensuring that the potential in district heating and waste heat is utilized to a larger extent than it is currently the case. Very importantly, energy poverty. And there is a clear link between energy efficiency in terms of really seizing all the potential of energy efficiency and the alleviation of energy poverty and support to vulnerable customers. And in this context, we are looking into provisions aimed at facilitating the access to technical help and to dedicated finance for households in risk of energy poverty and vulnerable energy customers. And this even more necessary now after this COVID crisis, which has raised the number of vulnerable customers and energy poverty overall. So clearly at the very heart of our concerns and at our work when looking into what would need to be done in terms of revising the Energy Efficiency Directive. We also see a role on the provision of energy savings for alleviating energy poverty. And here we also need to look into this in combination with the work and what will be done with the ETS, and notably with regard to a possible extension of the ETS to buildings. This would need to also be catered for, of course. Finally, we are assessing options to promote the establishment of energy communities, of national expert platforms, and one-stop shops that will offer and facilitate access to technical help, especially to most vulnerable consumers, as I just mentioned. It is also very important to highlight that this is not just done for the sake of decarbonization, but really we see multiple benefits of energy efficiency in terms of a big potential when it comes to local economic recovery and creation of local jobs. And in fact, energy efficiency and building renovation in particular offer the biggest potential for job creation in the entire green energy transition. This has been confirmed notably by IEA reports, and therefore it comes as no surprise that in the context of recovery and of the recovery plans, member states are exploring the potential of building renovation in their recovery and resilience plans. That's why I considered it also the title that you have chosen for this session. It's not just about getting fit for the climate target, but really also for the economic recovery. And here, energy efficiency and buildings offer a huge potential. And it's really, when I go back to this virtuous triangle, it is also about enabling the framework for investments. And we are putting forward with the Next Generation EU and the recovery funds really unprecedented funding, which will be available notably to invest in the building and the renovation of buildings. As said, this is being seized by member states in the preparation of the recovery plans. We have started receiving those plans and are assessing them. And we will also be ready, and we stand ready already to support the member states with dedicated technical assistance facility and to help member states putting into place national so-called ELENAs, the assistance facilities, and their Invest EU member states compartments. So really just to also bring in the recovery angle, which is really an enabling aspect of seizing the potential of energy efficiency. Finally, I cannot not speak about a key principle, which is the energy efficiency first principle, and which will be important to capture the energy savings potential in the sectors with high energy consumption, notably ICT, transport, but also others. And the objective of the energy first principle is that whenever energy efficiency can be considered as an alternative solution, it should be treated as a viable option and well analyzed in a cost-benefit analysis and impact assessment. So together with the Fit for 55, or I should rather say as part of the Fit for 55 package that the Commission plans to put forward, we are also putting forward guidelines and a recommendation on the energy efficiency first principle, so as to make it very, very clear on how in practice this principle can be applied. As you know, there is already a definition in the governance regulation. In the Energy Efficiency Directive, we're trying to make it even more concrete and specific, and then accompany it with concrete guidelines and a recommendation on how to go about in practice with the energy efficiency first principle. Then I had mentioned that even though it's coming out a bit later in the year, the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, it is also seen as part of the instruments that will lead to an increased climate target. And the main objectives of the revision of the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, the EPBD, is to increase the rate and depth of renovations. It's to decarbonize the buildings and really to push the modernization of buildings in line with the objectives of the renovation wave strategy as adopted last year. And on this one, on the EPBD, a stakeholder consultation has been launched. It is open until the 22nd of June. So for another less than a month. We really invite you and encourage you to take part in it, and really to so as that we have an informed feedback with a representative set of stakeholders contributing to it. Then in terms of process, we're looking into mid-July for the first set of the Fit for 55 package. So the idea is to adopt it mid-July. We are currently preparing the legislative proposals, and we really count on you, on your feedback as you've given already. And this is also a very good and timely event in this context, to give us feedback on what works, what does not work, what can be improved. And we are very, very confident that this package will allow us moving a step closer to achieving what are clearly ambitious decarbonization goals, but on which we need to lead if we really are serious about decarbonization and about a green and a digital transition. So thank you for your input, for an open dialogue that we've been having with all of you, and I very much look forward to listening to you, and also to the panel with excellent speakers that will follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paula, for giving us that great introductory speech. Can I just ask everybody, if they're asking questions, to put them in the Q&A rather than the chat box, so that my eyes only have to look at one place at once, otherwise it's slightly confusing as to who's actually asking what. There's a few questions that we've got already. Paula, if you've got a couple of minutes to stay and answer them, that would be great. The first one is looking in terms of buildings and making them more efficient. And the question is saying most consumption comes from old and inefficient heating equipment, and replacing this is key. But there's no actual European legislation that pushes for that. And is that something that could come into these revisions?
Clearly, as I mentioned very briefly, because of course I didn't go into the details of it, but heating and cooling is considered as one area with a huge potential in terms of energy savings, and therefore it is being looked into both in the Energy Efficiency Directive and in the Renewables Directive to see what is the potential of decarbonizing this very particular sector, which the participant is fully right. It does offer still a big potential in terms of decarbonizing.
Okay, great. I hope that answers the question. And obviously a second area that everybody's looking at the moment is this idea of including buildings and other sectors in the ETS. And perhaps you could give us a bit more information how that might work in terms of the linkages between potentially including buildings in the ETS and energy efficiency.
Yes, we need to see, and that of course, we haven't landed yet until the very last minute, and until the adoption and the discussion and decision by the College of Commissioners. So, and obviously this is one of the key issues, and of course a political decision on whether to go for an extension of the ETS to buildings. If we go ahead in this sense, of course, we need to see what are the impacts, what are the social impacts of such an extension, and how can these impacts be mitigated. So these are issues that are currently being looked into as part of the scenarios, if indeed an extension is carried out.
Okay, great, thank you. And then looking in terms of, there's the question of hydrogen, all the best questions are coming up, which is obviously quite controversial. There's a fair division in terms of whether hydrogen should be used to help decarbonize buildings or not, and I'm sure we'll come back onto the panel discussion to discuss that in a bit more detail. Will the Commission do more studies on this to come out with a clearer position in terms of showing whether hydrogen is a way of making buildings more efficient or not in terms of heating?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, on hydrogen, it is of course being looked into as part also of the whole package. And as I mentioned, it comprises also a second set later in the year, which is the decarbonization, the gas decarbonization package. And that's one of the instruments where it is being looked into. Of course, it's being looked into also in the framework of the revision of the Renewables Directive, when we talk about renewable hydrogen. So yes, this is being looked into, and what is the potential and what kind of hydrogen, probably not in an exhaustive manner in the first set of proposals, but as said, a very important proposal will come later in the year, the decarbonization of gas proposal, which will probably also cover the topic of hydrogen.
Okay, great, thank you. You've already mentioned it, I think, really in terms of the idea of whether we need clearly binding targets, and it's something that, as you say, respondents to the inquiry came out quite strongly in favour on. Is there anything else that you can add in terms of that as to whether energy efficiency should be put at the same level as renewable targets?
Well, there seems to clearly be a lot of support for that. I mean, even in the public consultation, it was very interesting to see that there is even a very strong support for national binding targets. We're trying to see what would really work, what would bring us forward. As said before, we believe that one of the reasons why we do not seem to be there yet, even with the existing 2030 target in terms of collective contributions from the member states, seems to be the absence of a clear benchmark for member states to know actually what should be my ideal contribution, which we had for renewables. So for renewables, we have the clear EU binding target, and it was underpinned by national contributions, voluntary, but at least there was a clear benchmark. And I think this really helped member states to know what should be my ideal contribution. We didn't have this for energy efficiency. So we're clearly, this is one of the options that is being explored, is whether we should look into having such benchmarks for member states. Okay.
And in terms of what actually helps energy efficiency move forward, you mentioned, for example, economic metrics, enabling frameworks, etc. And in terms of the different pricing measures, did you analyse the effectiveness of those different pricing measures and how they could enable energy efficiency to move up the agenda and be seen as a tool which was much more important by member states?
Yes, we're looking into all of this and really seeing that, and I said, the combination, there's really no one silver bullet. It's a combination of policy instruments. If you take carbon pricing alone, we believe, yes, it can be an incentive to decarbonize buildings, but probably not enough, because there's a limit to the elasticity of the price when it comes to buildings. So therefore, we believe that you would always need dedicated measures on energy efficiency on buildings to really cater for this shift, for making the best out of the potential of the decarbonization in buildings.
And sticking with buildings, for the extension of the scope of Article 5 of the EED on public buildings, what different approaches is the Commission considering?
Well, there, you know that, for instance, one of the aspects being looked into, again, this was part of the public consultation. For the moment, these obligations on the public administration only concern the central level of the administration. So there was the question whether the scope of the provision should be enlarged to cover also other levels of administration. So this is one of the options. And again, I'm speaking of options because we are still at the stage of the impact assessment where we have put together the various options and are assessing them in terms of seeing then what would be the most cost-efficient measures that should be then reflected in the final proposal.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm just quickly, I think we've probably got time for another question or two. One of the questions is looking in terms of member states and major infrastructure projects under the Just Transition Fund and other EU funding that's now out there, especially post-COVID. And the question is, sorry, I'm just reading it, it's quite long. In terms of these funds, should energy efficiency first be a defining principle in those plans before they receive funding from the EU?
Well, I mentioned briefly the recovery and the recovery plans, where clearly energy efficiency should indeed be a reference, and you know that the Commission has come out with very clear guidelines also to help member states preparing those plans, to indicate under what conditions would energy efficiency, would renovation of buildings benefit from the EU funds, in this case from the recovery funds. So it's really worth looking into those also to see what are those conditions. And then later on we will be looking into the just transition plans, which are also being prepared, and which well, we hope that at the end of the day should all be consistent, but indeed not only it is a very big component, should be a big component of these plans, because as we said, we see a big potential there, and we are very much encouraging and therefore also put forward clear guidelines on what the plans would need to meet in terms of criteria so as to be eligible for EU funding.
Okay, great. Okay, super. Well, thanks, Paula. I think those are the questions that we had for you. So thank you very much for being with us today. I'm going to open the panel now. So I think they're going to reflect a little bit on what you've said. So if you've got time to stay around, that would be great. And then you can hear what the panelists have got to say. But thank you very much for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. So if everybody who's on the panel wants to switch their cameras on, that would be super. Thank you. Martin, Andrea, Thomas and Tatiana. Martin, are you with us? Could you switch your camera on? And Tatiana as well, please.
I need a permission to do that.
Okay.
The host has stopped it.
The host has stopped it. Can the host allow Martin to stick his camera on, please? Thank you. Sorry about that, Martin.
No worries.
Okay, so to continue the discussion, we have Martin Hojsik, Member of the European Parliament from the Renew Group, Andrea Voigt, Chair of the Coalition Steering Committee from EPEE, the European Partnership for Energy and Environment, Thomas Nowak, Secretary General of the European Heat Pump Association, and Tatiana Bosteels, Senior Economist at the European Investment Bank. So to kick off the panel discussion, it will be interesting to hear what you all thought about what the Commission, what Paula just had to say, and to build a little bit on that discussion from your point of view. So Martin, perhaps you could kick us off and give us your thoughts on what you've just heard and where you see the European Parliament's ambition on energy efficiency going forward.
Well, the Parliament's ambition still remains to be seen. We don't have the on the table yet, nor the red. And looking at the timeline for the public consultation, I'm wondering whether the Commission will make it for the 14th of July. Let's hope so, because we need to update legislation and we need to do it urgently. Yeah, I can go into the details of things like, okay, I believe that there should be a national mandatory targets, not just kind of going on a declaratory way, because we have experience in the Union, and an example is the biodiversity that, yeah, we promise that we will strive to do something, and then, you know, if it's not in the law, we're not so good at achieving this. But let me take it from a slightly different perspective, because I think what we have here, and especially also with the recovery and resilience facility and the whole recovery plans, is an opportunity which we cannot afford to miss. And it's not only from a climate perspective, it's also from a socio-economical perspective, as well as from the strategic autonomy perspective. Because let's be honest, gas is being predominantly imported from also such a friendly regimes as Russia, and you know, coming from the former Soviet bloc, I can feel it pretty close. And I think this is where we should really look at how we actually really follow the energy efficiency first principle, because we don't. What we see is okay, there is an air pollution problem and a problem with use of coal, so let's switch the worst to the second worst in terms of the heating, rather than starting from really the hierarchy that we should be following to go for the energy efficiency first. And I think the potential, and I've been seeing it in a number of examples in Slovakia, is really, really huge. And I think Slovakia is an interesting example because we are the most industrialized country, and at the same time we are a country which is often saying that, well, you know, as a Central and Eastern European country, please take it easy on us, especially in the sectors that are outside of the ETS, which the buildings are and the heating is. So I think this is something where we are missing the opportunity, because we actually have a head start. If you take example of Slovakia, we have approximately -42 currently from 1990 as the benchmark year, whereas the top poster child Denmark is -20. Romania is saying that they cannot manage, it's going to be hard. They're already at -55. They actually can just sit back and do nothing and achieve the -55 on a national level. So where the hell is the problem? Why there is a need now to suddenly invest into transition solutions rather than going for the real solution? And that's kind of energy efficiency first and then renewables. The second thing is the opportunity to address the energy poverty. Because honestly, if you have hard time to pay your energy bills now, a new heating boiler will not sort out your problems. It's actually the start with the energy efficiency. And there's been some interesting projects and studies done in Slovakia, and one of the latest one is from a very north small region close to called Zamagori, close to the Polish border, where the estimate is that, or the study found out, that they did an audit of all the buildings and everything. The study found out that right now, it's predominantly gas with some wood use, very, very little coal. They could actually cut down both the residential as well as commercial buildings, the energy usage by 75% with energy efficiency, 77 to 75%, with the extremely strict environmental sustainability criteria for renewables, make more than they currently need in the region, and from a region which has the money flowing out for the energies, be a region which has money flowing in for the sale of energy. And this is something which I believe, with the right financial tools, with the right setup, is the way forward to address the energy poverty. Because at the end of the day, it provides you with a higher living standards in terms of your housing, because putting in old uninsulated home a new heating boiler to change coal for gas, it's not really going to improve your living standard. And it's also providing additional income for the region and ultimately for the people. And I think this is something what we need to look at, how we put it into the legislation, how we put principles that will not just kind of, the targets are important, but principles that will ensure that we really follow energy efficiency first before anything else. And also what's going to be important is how we look at it from perspective of implementation of the National Recovery and Resilience Plans. Because one thing is how the Commission will be assessing the plans themselves, but then equally important will be how, and also how, in course of the prepared delegated act for the monitoring, will the actual actions, actual projects, and actual reforms on the ground be judged against the no significant harm principle, and this fundamental logic of energy efficiency first. I think these are going to be really, really crucial actions, and from Parliament's point of view, I think this is what we're going to be following, is how we stick to what we actually all agree to, that energy efficiency in terms of the energy sector should come first. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. So yeah, and Andrea, if you could come back on that. So energy efficiency first is nothing new, obviously, in the EU. It's been around for a long time. And there is various arguments there in terms of energy poverty, climate, jobs, to say, you know, that should be what we're leading on, but it's not been where we've been until now. So is now the right time for this to change, and exactly what needs to happen so that it does change?
Well, thank you very much, Philippa. And first of all, a big thank you to Paula for her great speech, which I found extremely encouraging. Not the least because you really touched upon all of the points which are really close to the heart of the Coalition for Energy Savings, and certainly also close to the heart of my own organization, EPEE. So really a big thank you for opening all these doors, basically, and showing in which direction this could evolve, generally speaking. So yeah, to come back to Philippa's question then, well, yeah, I think we've got a window of opportunity which we will not see so quickly again. So not using that window of opportunity would really be dramatic, I would say. So it's a window of opportunity in terms of the instruments that are out there, and also in terms of the, I think in terms of the mindset of the people right now. So there are a lot of circumstances that come together, which should really be used to the best effect. So yes, it has been around for a long time, the energy efficiency first principle, that's true. We have really a whole bunch of measures which is out there in the clean energy package, that's true as well. I think we are fairly well advanced in the EU already, comparing to other regions in the world, when we look at the different angles that are already being tackled by the clean energy package. So I think there is a lot which is out there already. And I think now the opportunity really is to further fine tune and to further improve that, and to really make sure this coherence is given, because I think that is the singular opportunity that we have here, is to bring together these different angles, the angle of the energy efficiency as an enabler for all the rest of it. And I'm saying that because a lot of people often talk about the importance of renewable energies, the importance of the energy transition, and that certainly is key to achieve the 55 target and also carbon neutrality, because energy plays such an important role. I think Paula said 75% of the total greenhouse gas emissions, so yes, clearly. But if we don't have the energy efficiency in the first place, then simply this whole energy transition is not going to be affordable for anybody. It's just going to be too expensive. And that then too expensive for the people, too expensive for business, too expensive for governments. It will backfire if we don't make sure that this whole framework is well in place, and that energy efficiency is looked upon as the first go-to solution, really, in order to make all of this happen. And coming back to the different points that were mentioned by Paula and also your question, Philippa, I think there are a number of articles in now going back to the Energy Efficiency Directive, specifically because that's the key focus of the Coalition for Energy Savings, bearing in mind that we have several other measures which are very important as well, obviously. First of all, the target question. Of course, having a binding target is extremely important. The other measures are binding, renewables and greenhouse gases, and energy efficiency is not. And by coincidence, we are not on track. So yes, there needs to be a binding target very clearly. And that target must be higher. It should be 40% really, if we want to go where we have to go. Then on the national level, we just heard from Martin also several points on the importance of looking at how this is being done on the ground and how this happens at national level. So we need also national binding contributions, ideally. I understood what Paula was saying in terms of the benchmark. That certainly is important. If it were binding, it would be even better. So that's in terms of the targets, and in terms of the different articles in the Energy Efficiency Directive, there are a number of hooks which really could help us a lot. Like, for example, the Article 7, more ambition there. I mean, it works. We've seen already it works, but there's also still a lot to be done in terms of implementation, in terms of monitoring, in terms of verification, making sure that really true savings are being counted and not savings on paper, if you like. So that is certainly an important point. The role of public authorities was mentioned, public buildings, public procurement. I think the public sector can really set an example here. And there are quite a number of angles there, like, for example, extending to all public buildings, not only at central level, but also locally and regionally, of course. Then in terms of public procurement, making sure that this is really taken up in public procurement, and that also the right capacity building is being done so that the authorities know what to do and how to do it. Heating and cooling, of course, is close to our own organization, but it is clearly a top priority if you consider that half of the total final energy consumption in Europe is for heating and cooling. So not tackling that sector would really be, would be dramatic, I would say. And there we have, again, angles in the EED, which can help in terms of the planning, the comprehensive planning of everything. So that you see where you can use synergies also in communities, in cities, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of district heating and cooling solutions, but also in terms of integrating better with national energy and climate plans and renovation strategies, of course. And another point that was also mentioned by Paula was, I think I wrote down at least, was energy performance contracting as one key avenue as well. From our side, we also think that energy audits can provide a further avenue for industry to make sure that recommendations are also implemented and not just a nice recommendation again on paper. So a lot of angles, a lot of instruments out there, a lot of policies that we have already, and now the opportunity to really further work on them, fine-tune them, implement them, and get the people on the ground to really adopt them and to endorse them, so that it's not just theoretical, but really turns into action on the ground, because that's what we really need now at national level. And one very last point, and then I stop, on the emission trading. I just wanted to come briefly back on that one. If there were to be an emission trading and an extension of emission trading to heating and cooling as well, to buildings specifically, then at least it should be made sure that the money is being earmarked, at least to a certain extent, for energy efficiency, for all the reasons that I mentioned, because we need the energy efficiency to make the energy transition happen. So that would be really a key point there. And the other key point, it will never replace dedicated measures. It can only be a complement. It can never be a replacement for a dedicated measure tackling energy efficiency like the EED or like the EPBD, etc. And I stop here. I could go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Sorry, we only have a certain amount of time. And if anybody wants to ask questions, any of the attendees, then please pop them in the Q&A and I will ask them to the participants. So Thomas, in terms of decarbonising buildings and heating in particular, then what are the key measures we need? Binding targets seem to be a fairly no-brainer for everybody. What else are the priorities that we need?
Yeah, maybe not so quick. So thank you also for inviting me, and thank you, Paula, for the very comprehensive speech. I was impressed on how many things you covered, and many things have been said already, but I wanted to come back to one of these things. You say it's a no-brainer, but why is it so difficult, if it's such a no-brainer, to make it real? You know, why is everybody so much against having binding targets if that's such a no-brainer? Martin mentioned it, Andrea mentioned it, we have seen some of the questions, you mentioned it now. And I think the one reason is that we have a completely distorted energy price system. It does not pay to be energy efficient today. It pays completely to waste energy. A colleague of mine always says, you know, if you put the candy bar on the table, and the candy bar in this case being fossil fuels, and you make that available all the time, the kids will not eat the apples. And I think really we have to let that sink in. The question is, how do we make it affordable to save energy? And it's not like saying make everything else more expensive, because then we have the affordability question. But the key question for me is introduce a cap, trade, and dividend system. So there needs to be some sort of phase down, pretty much a line that says we have to reduce energy demand, then we have to replace the rest with renewables, to cover the demand with renewables. And then if you pay for that, if you pay for using fossil energy, this money is not going into general budgets, but it's indeed used, as Andrea said, to help poor households, to help poor countries, if you want, to execute energy savings. I think this is really covering a huge bit in the whole discussion. Then when it comes to specific aspects, Energy Efficiency Directive is a great tool, but at the moment, it is not distinguishing between which solution is used to make energy efficiency better, especially this Article 7, at the moment, it's just giving you a bonus for energy efficiency measures, but it does not distinguish between energy efficiency measures that use renewables and energy efficiency measures that don't. That's one thing that we would like to see, a bit more a comprehensive approach here. I will not go into the details of the calculation of this, but there is also some aspects that need to be sorted out, especially when it comes to the comparison between the different measures and also the proper recognition of industrial applications. It was mentioned by Paula also that industrial savings will or should get a better recognition. In this context, what I would like to see is a better recognition of waste heat from buildings. At the moment, there is, in my opinion, a very obscure connection that waste heat can only be accounted for if it's then put into district heating. Why? Why can we not have a circular economy that happens inside, a circular energy economy that happens inside a building or inside a small building block? And then, of course, the question is, how well is everybody using the district heating definition? That is actually also part of the discussion. But here I would like to establish, or I would like to see an understanding that energy should be led in circles with a connection to district heating, with a connection to some sort of storage, and then you can actually help to overcome differences in energy demand, difference in time of energy demand, and different in location of energy demand. So that would be one thing. And then we would really avoid thermal waste, because what we're doing at the moment is we're allowing energy from burning fossil fuels, heat that you cannot use because you're burning a flame at more than 1000 degrees and you need 55 degrees for your hot water. And some people say this is really efficient, let's do that in the future too. Which, you know, this whole discussion about e-fuels is violating, it's a slap in the face of energy efficiency first, if you want. So if you really do energy efficiency first, the discussion on using e-fuels to heat a house is answered. So energy waste, heat waste should not be done. And then the last point that I would like to make is these comprehensive assessments. Member states, maybe not all member states know the same or have knowledge on the same level of what needs to be done when it comes to energy efficiency first and the use of renewables. So I see that the Commission could do a little bit more in evaluating now the national energy and climate plans, but also pushing towards these comprehensive assessments so that they become a comprehensive assessment of the energy picture, including heating and cooling, and doing more than just CHP and district heating. I know you can interpret it like that, but it's not always done like that. So I see there is room for guidance documents and for creating of transparency, of overview, of oversight between the measures that are happening in the different member states. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Paula, I'll ask you to come in a few minutes. I just wanted to ask Tatiana first to come in and explain to us a bit more, build on what Thomas was saying about the economic arguments of energy efficiency, and to explain that a bit more and why member states, it's much easier for them to go out there and build a big renewables project rather than focus on energy efficiency. And then Paula, if you're still there, I'd like you to bring you in to address the other points that Thomas raised. Thank you, Tatiana.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And first, similarly, very pleased to be here today, and very pleased with the presentation, Paula, that you have given to us. From my perspective, and in answer to an indirect answer to your question, Philippa, what I really took as a key message here is this virtuous triangle. If we are to deliver energy efficiency at the scale that is required to achieve the 55 target, and 40% it's a huge achievement. We are speaking about 280 billion a year of investment in Europe between now and 2030. This virtuous circle for me is crucial, and it answers a lot of the questions about why is it difficult to implement. The carbon price is one, but I agree when it comes to building an energy efficiency at the moment, it's a small one. A strong sector policy, whether it's in building or transport, is crucial. And of course, you would not be surprised from the perspective of the EIB, an enabling framework to investment. Because what we do see is very often a fear that energy efficiency is not cost effective to implement, while in reality, as the expert on this panel will tell you, it is the most cost-effective measure to deliver the 55 target. But there is still a notion of risk, which a number of investors and project developers, and particular investors, have, that energy efficiency is inherently more risky. And so we need to work on that. Therefore, I think one of the crucial elements that Paula has mentioned is the need to facilitate technical support in terms of project development and access to finance. And in that regard, I think the approach that is being pushed forward, and that in the EIB we called our EIB renovation approach, which is to have a new ways of thinking about finance and a systemic approach. And what do I mean by that? Is that we need to convince the member states that they can both have tailored financial support and products, and support through project development assistance and technical assistance to aggregate and develop projects at a scale and according to risk parameters that fit the investment criteria, not the developer's criteria. Otherwise, we cannot match the finance and the supply of products of building renovation or other projects. We also need, and I was pleased to hear Paula mention also the blending of financial support, including guarantees, which we have already done in the past, and that is included very much in the InvestEU and mentioned in the EU Innovation Wave. So to link loans, such as the one that the EIB can provide, or other promotional national banks and investments funds, to link them, to blend them with grants from structural funds or the Just Transition Fund or others, but also tailor them with tailor development assistance, project development assistance, and technical assistance, which in my view is crucial. Finally, there are a growing number of innovative financial products. I'll mention one, the Energy Efficiency Mortgage Initiative, which is really a very good way of demonstrating today to member states that reaching a renovation rate more than 2 times what we currently see is feasible, because finance can be provided, even if often originally it was thought as extremely difficult to convince occupiers, which is you, me, and the participants here on the seminar, to actually renovate their buildings. Nowadays, you do have mortgages which take that into account, so it's easier to do. And finally, I would say that a very important aspect is to work in partnership. I think we have seen already a strengthened dialogue as part of first the National Energy and Climate Plan, and of course now as part of the Recovery and Resilience Fund. We have some really good examples of member states who have approached finance institutions like the EIB to say, we have an ambition to have a very strong percentage of our Recovery and Renovation Fund allocated to building innovation, for example. How can we develop financing models? And so I think that these are key aspects to address the issue of, is it a given that energy efficiency is easy or not? And maybe, I think over the years we have spoken more about it, but potentially not enough. And so the dialogue with the member state is a crucial step, and we are very open at the EIB to engage in that dialogue, and we have done so as part of the National Energy and Climate Plans, and we continue to do so as we go along. And finally, I think the aspect that Paula has mentioned of technical assistance and project development assistance, some very successful elements. Example is the ELENA facility or the European Investment Advisory Hub. So we're very pleased to hear about the national ELENA one-stop shop to provide that at a much larger scale. And to give you an example, the experience we have had in the EIB is that for every euro provided through project development assistance with ELENA, we have had 35 euros of investment. So again, a clear signal for member states to say that with the proper project development assistance, we can unlock finance. And so I was very pleased to hear the national ELENA. And indeed, in the InvestEU, there is a dedicated budget to increase the support of similar facilities as ELENA, including at the national level. So this is an opening, and I'm very happy to have more question or to have a discussion on this subject.
Thank you, Tatiana. That's really interesting what you've just said. Paula, if you're still there, would you mind perhaps answering the comments that Thomas just mentioned in terms of waste and this kind of virtuous circle that we could have in buildings of not wasting energy, and perhaps any comments you have in terms of what Tatiana's just said in terms of the financing, and also how we get member states to participate a bit more. And then Martin, I'd like to ask you as well about the role of the member states.
Thank you, Philippa. I was not planning to come back. I was planning to sit back, relax, and
no, since you're there, we need to use you. You see, everybody was very impressed by what you said, so it's good to get your views.
And hear the panelists' comments, which really also as a newcomer now to this area helped me understanding. And Thomas, really, when I came in, this was one of my first questions, and has been in my mind for many years as I deal with energy, which is, why is it that we're not delivering more on energy efficiency? Because it really should be a no-brainer. And the more I look into it, the more I see that it's really, because it's a combination of issues. It's not just about the regulatory aspects. It's not just about the financing. It's not just about the technicals. It's really a combination of everything, and we need to get the recipe right, basically. It's all those ingredients are there, and somehow the cake has still not succeeded. It's I don't know if it's the portions of the various ingredients that we still have to better calibrate, but it's really a combination of instruments that we have to put there. You mentioned some specific examples that, for instance, we're not distinguishing between measures which use renewables and which don't. This is one of the avenues being explored. And again, as I mentioned, it's not just through the Energy Efficiency Directive. We are also looking into heating and cooling through the Renewables Directive in a way that complement each other, and also in line with a gradual transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources. So that's clearly let's say the backstage, which is inspiring the revision. And again, the circularity, the aspects of trying to really use the waste heat and make the best out of it, be it in the data centers, how to transform it, how to use it in district heating. These are issues, of course, I have not been exhaustive, but these are all options that are being looked into.
Super, Paula. Sorry to put you on the spot, but since you're there, I thought we'd just make the most of it. Thank you. Martin, perhaps you could also come in terms of how we can get member states more involved and what role MEPs can play in that.
Well, I think this is on a multiple levels. One thing is to start from the end as an MEPs. Obviously, there is a role as a co-legislator when legislation comes our way, and hopefully it will be so good there will be very little to change. That's the preferred scenario. But it's also about going, so to say, back home from Brussels, where I'm now, and talking to all the different stakeholders and my own government. Because often what you see is, and that's connected historically to the energy utilities, to be very frank, is because the energy utilities had been in, to say, close relationship with governments, there is also quite a bit of old vested interest in moving to gas. That's simply something which can be seen on Europe, it can be Europe, and that's something which creates a bit of an obstacle in convincing the policymakers on the member state level that this is something which has much higher perspective. And I don't think that this is only, and that's what we forget, and maybe this is something where we should start talking about it more. It's not only about the energy savings, the strategic autonomy, the climate, the air pollution. This is also about jobs, and I don't mean the construction jobs. I mean the jobs in the entire supply chain. This is something where we should, as a Europe, look at it from a bigger perspective, because I think my hope is that the money talks, and at least the businesses will more and more listen to the money, and on this level. And this is where what we need to look at is how we make sure that from the supply chain of the energy efficiency boom that I hope it's coming, we as a Europe get maximum out in terms of the industries and economic activity, that we try to make sure that this is also done in the most sustainable way possible, and using the right criteria, and actually end up being an exporters of these technologies. Because really the energy efficiency, especially in the building sectors, offers jobs from the low skilled worker to high-end jobs of kind of inventors, so or kind of the technical designers of I don't know, not just heat pumps or anything else.
Yeah, so there's plenty of opportunities out there, as you
and
say. Definitely.
It's about I think it's about grabbing really trying to grab these opportunities and showing that this is not something that should happen because of climate.
Sure. Yeah.
This is the climate is part of the reason, but it makes so much sense on so many other levels.
Okay, great. Thank you, Martin. And Tatiana, you mentioned lots of tools and what needs to happen in sense of the EIB itself. Is the EIB got plans to increase its spending specifically on energy efficiency rather than into renewable projects, or into both as the EU Climate Bank?
Not only we're planning to, but actually we have already done so increasingly over the years. So to give you an example, and I'd like to put it in the context of the 280 billion that I mentioned a little bit before per annum. The EIB last year invested just under 6 billion, 5.8 billion in energy efficiency, which is an increase from 1.1 billion in 2012. And so while this is a major increase, and very much we are indeed planning to do so, also in correlation with the InvestEU and the European policy objectives, it still means that we need to have a serious amount of crowding in of private investors to deliver the European objectives. So the answer is yes, but as much as we are planning to invest EIB money, we're also planning to ensure that there is a co-investment happening and incentivizing financial intermediaries to work with us towards that goal. And I think this is one area also where to support member states in understanding how they can deliver their energy efficiency target is a great role to be given to national promotional banks. There are some very good examples. One that comes to my mind is in, I don't want to have the wrong name, but in Lithuania, the VIPA Energy Efficiency Investment Platform under the Sustainable Finance for Sustainable Buildings initiative that links loans with guarantees to the financial institution. It's working with the national promotional investment that they've the EIB working with them, or them working with the EIB to be more correct, my apologies there, have established a platform to invest in energy efficiency modernization projects in residential and public building, which has been very successful, and ongoing discussion on how to expand that. And I think if you do indeed have in parallel with an understanding, as in this virtuous triangle perspective, of what are the legislative framework that is required, if member states can be reassured that they will be financed to back up those projects, they will be potentially more willing to have more ambitious targets. Because it is true that in the last 10 and then 5 years, the investment required for energy efficiency has been relatively slow in coming. And as I said, I think there has also been an understanding on energy efficiency inherent risk, which was very biased. And there's another point, which is investors don't really like small projects. So they look at energy efficiency and they think, oh, it's complicated. God, it's small. I don't know. It's multiple technologies, multiple sectors. Do I really want to do that? And so what we have seen is the work of one-stop shops, and the EIB now wants to be one of those as well. But there are a number of examples financed by the ELENA initiative, for example, across numerous member states, in France, in Ireland, in Italy. They actually support this aggregation of projects, which means that when investors come, and the EIB Hub and Jaspers also do that, when the investors come, they have a package that is much closer to the kind of products that they feel comfortable to finance. Also, there's been a lot of technical assistance that has been provided to financial institutions to themselves build one-stop shop within the banks, so that they have the resource internally to do that work of assessing risk and aggregation. But I think that dialogue in terms of where will the finance come from, and it's, as I said, it's impossible that all of it will come from the EIB. Obviously, a big part, and the EIB will be there to support and to provide technical assistance. But that knowledge needs to be transferred at the member state level as well. And indeed, I think that the Recovery and Resilience Fund, in addition to the new MFF, which is a sort of focus on climate and the Green Deal, it's a unique opportunity. And so I think the local ELENAs are a crucial step there, as it is to work with promotional banks.
Thanks, Tatiana. And presumably that's also where Thomas and Andrea, that your networks come in as well, in terms of explaining in a member state level what can happen and what should be happening. Martin and others have mentioned employment, and that we can create all these jobs with energy efficiency. I mean, employment isn't a European Commission competence, so it's obviously something that's going to happen at member state level. Thomas, how do we create those jobs and make sure that they're also decent jobs that come with this change?
Well, I think it's not necessarily an immediate competence of the European Commission, but by shaping the market reality, they actually influence employment in or outside Europe quite a bit. And if the focus is on supporting technologies that are energy efficient, where Europe has a lead, and now I represent the heat pump industry, I would say that in heat pumps, there is quite a good competence in Europe, not only in manufacturers, but also in universities. Then we have quite a good, solid foundation. We require today about 90,000 full-time equivalents every year to maintain the current status of heat pump deployment. And if we follow what the European Commission has said, a quadrupling of that number, then this number will inevitably quadruple too. I'm very careful with saying we will create these jobs, but there's going to be a retraining from other sectors, from traditional plumbers, from traditional installers that can also work in heat pump deployment. And when it comes to where are these jobs, and I think that's also something, the spatial distribution. We have recently done a survey where we can conclude that there is more than 165 factories, mostly SMEs, that manufacture heat pumps and components across Europe. And by some very strange coincidence that I cannot make up my mind why this has happened, but most of these factories are in the most remote areas of Europe. So you have to drive to Danfoss in the peak of Denmark. You have to drive to some other manufacturers at the coast of Belgium, or to the middle of the Black Forest, and they are never central. So they create jobs and perspective in areas that are otherwise not in the focus of policymakers' attention.
Can I just add something to what Thomas was saying in terms of the skills and the capacities? I think we have to be very careful that this doesn't turn into a bottleneck, actually, because already today there is a severe lack of sufficiently trained installers for example, for heat pump technologies, but also across the board, basically. because they are loaded up until here with work, and it's really difficult to get hold of people when you need them. I mean, speaking for me personally, living in Belgium, you want to have whatever, you want to replace your gas boiler by a heat pump. You have to be fairly creative if you want to be sure that this happens not in 10 years, but I'm exaggerating, but if you want to make sure that this happens rather quickly. So I think, and also they are confronted with a lot of changes, with a lot of interlinked other regulations. So I think it's something that deserves quite some attention. I'm not saying that the installers are not able. I'm just saying they are not enough, and they need to, of course, also move with the developments that are happening, so that it remains a business case for them as well. Because if you make your money, for example, with whatever, I don't want to quote any technologies here, but if you want to make your money with a certain technology, then you're used to that, and making your money with another technology is maybe not so interesting for you anymore. So I think there is a lot that still needs to happen in that sense if we really want to push this forward.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot needs to happen in a very short amount of time. So it needs to happen, quickly. We haven't got a lot of time. Does anybody have a final comment they want to make? We've got a minute or two, and then I'll hand over to Ariana for the closing remarks. Martin, I don't know if you wanted to come back in on the employment or anything, or you were quite happy with everybody's reaction to what you'd said? No,
this is definitely not just opportunity, but also challenge. And I'm sometimes worried when I hear the Commission talking about kind of what can everything be done, but it's really something that we need to think it through and look at, so to say, the long tail of all these activities, and help to create the right conditions for it to happen, because the opportunity can turn into disappointment if we don't do it right. And that's something which the planet cannot afford, the Europe cannot afford, and each of us cannot afford. And that's where we need to really make sure that we use it as an opportunity, not as a threat.
Well, I think the words that Paula gave us have offered lots of reassurance that things are on the right track. So I shall pass over to Ariana for the final words. Thank you very much for a really interesting panel discussion. Ariana, thank you.
Hi, thank you, Philippa, and thank you very much all for this very interesting discussion. So I would like, first of all, to thank you, Paula, for her comprehensive explanation of the initial Commission intention with the revision of the Energy Efficiency Directive and the 5455 package. We heard from her that the Commission is really thinking to bring together different points of the puzzle, looking not only at the level of a high increased targets, but also at complementary measures. And that's also, as Andrea mentioned already, very reassuring from the coalition point of view. I would like also to thank the other speaker for making such interesting points, from Martin to the EB, to Thomas and to Andrea. I think from all the intervention, one thing is clear: there are plenty of opportunities ahead with the revision of the directive, and to enshrine energy efficiency as a key element of the package. And it's also clear that the Energy Efficiency Directive is not revised in the right way this time around. This will put at risk, on one side, the achievement of the climate objective and a higher one, but also will put at jeopardy a sustainable and affordable and fair economic recovery from everyone. So I think that's just the starting point of our discussion. We are looking forward to the Commission proposal hopefully in July, and we are also looking forward to engage with the other stakeholders and all the institutions to make the revision of the Energy Efficiency Directive and of the other legislation a big success. So thank you very much for staying with us for all this interesting panel discussion, and I wish you all a nice rest of the evening. Thank you very much.